International values, which is an extension of the cost of production theory of value to the international trade situation. Within a general framework comprising input, trade, and choice of production techniques, the new theory analyzed the international values, the system, the consists of which of each country and the prices of goods, gains and losses from trade, and the patterns of specialization. So, international value is isa sa importante na ginagamit sa tao, which that nakabot siya maayo. And then, these values need each of one because without this value, we don't know how we communicate other. So, these are the example of common international value. We have honesty, integrity, kindness, generosity, courage, confidence, and so on.
Power distance. Power distance describes the degree to which people in a country accept that power in institutions and organizations is distributed unequally. So, ang power distance is mag-isgot siya sa institutions and organisasyon ug ang culture nga nagahatag og maayong difference sa mga person of authority, it is a high power distance culture. And culture that values the equal treatment of everyone is a low power distance culture. A high rating on power distance means that large inequalities of the power and wealth exist are tolerated in the culture as in a class or caste system that discourages upward mobility. So, ang high power distance is, ang example anak niya is ang autocratic bosses, considerable dependence on bosses, the centralization of responsibilities, the inequality among workers, and last is subordinates expect to told what to do. A low power distance rating characterizes societies that stress inequality and opportunity. So, ang example sa low power distance is ang democratic bosses, the limited dependence on bosses, the decentralization of responsibilities, the inequality among workers, the less classes among workers, and the last is subordinates expect to be consulted. Individualism versus collectivism. Individualism is the degree to which people prefer to act as individuals rather than as a members of groups and believe in individual rights above all. So, ang individualism is focused on the individual, responsibility for themselves and immediately family, the management mobility, the private and work life separate, the pleasure from individual achievement. Ang collectivism emphasizes a tight social framework in which people expect others in groups of which they are a part to look after them and protect them. So, ang collectivism is focused on the group, the responsibility for family and extended family, the employee commitment, the work and private lives intermix, and the pleasure from achievement.
Masculinity versus femininity. Masculinity is the degree to which the culture favors traditional masculine rules such as achievement, power, and control, while the femininity means the culture sees little differentiation between male and female rules and treats women as the equals of men in all respects. So according to Hofstede's definition, the masculinity is a preference for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material reward for success, while the femininity, it represents as a preference for cooperation, modesty, caring for the weak, and quality of life. Here's the example of masculinity versus femininity. The example of masculinity and femininity is goal setting versus growing insight. So, ang masculinity is a goal setting siya because nag-focus lang siya sa iyang goal or sa kung unsa pay possible niya nga ma-achieve. And then, growing insight is much more a feminine trait. This growing insight also supports the cultural need to seek consensus rather than to make fast decisions. So let's proceed to the next topic, which is uncertainty avoidance. When we say uncertainty avoidance, it can be defined as the degree to which a culture or society will accept someone being anxious or uncertain about the unknown. So, the uncertainty avoidance is the extent to which the culture's member feel threatened or uncertain, unknown situation or embrace this situation. Cultures that score high and low on uncertainty avoidance. In culture that score high on uncertainty avoidance, people have an increased level of anxiety about uncertainty and ambiguity and use laws and controls to reduce uncertainty. People in cultures with high uncertainty avoidance try to minimize the occurrence of unknown and unusual circumstances and to proceed with careful changes step by planning and by implementing rules, laws, and regulation. For example, more formal rules. Leader is the expert. Precision and security is important. Low labor turnover. And more resistance to change. People in cultures low on uncertainty avoidance are more accepting of ambiguity, are less rule-oriented, take more risk, and more readily accept change. In the low on uncertainty avoidance, mao ni siya ang type of person nga willing mo take og risk and magbag-o sa ilahang kaugalingon in order to avoid uncertainty. For example, few rules. Leader is facilitator. Innovation and achievements are important. High labor turnover. Less resistance to change.
Long-term versus short-term orientation. This newest addition to host states typology measures a society's devotion to traditional value. People in the culture with long-term orientation look to the future and the value thrift, persistence, and tradition. In short-term orientation, people value the here and now. They accept change more readily and don't see commitments as impediments to change. Short-term orientation culture tend to be individualistic, which means that people are more likely to think in terms of I rather than we. Example of short-term orientation culture include the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And long-term orientation culture tends to be collective, which means that people are more likely to think in terms of we rather than I. Example of long-term orientation culture included China, Japan, and South Korea. So, long-term orientation is defined as when a society is focused on the future, while short-term orientation society is more focused on the present and the past. Thank you and God bless.